I hereby call the Belmont-Redwood Shore School District regular board meeting to order. It is now 5 p.m. Ms. Ellinger, are there any public comments for the closed session agenda items?
President Lineback, there are not.
Being that there are no comments, the board will now convene to closed session at 5 o'clock p.m. and return at 6:15 p.m.
Boardroom is muted.
We're still waiting for a couple trustees to return.
Yeah, Jim, were your ears burning? We were talking about you. All right. Everyone can hear me online okay? Just give a thumbs up. Okay, super, great. All right, I will now reconvene the regular board meeting at 6:24 p.m. Okay, item number 5, flag salute. Please everyone rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, tonight's meeting is being recorded and also streamed live on YouTube. I do have one item to report out from the closed session. The Board of Trustees reviewed and voted 5-0 to accept a confidential settlement to resolve claims against the district instead of proceeding to litigation. Continuing on to number 7, I will go to the Board of Trustees report, and I will start with Trustee Howard first online.
Yeah, I would just say that it was a lot of fun and a nice honor to provide the our educators and staff with a barbecue yesterday. That was a great picnic. It was good to see everybody out, and also thank the Nesbitt teachers for coming out and giving us their comments for the brown bag today. That's enough for today.
Okay, on to Trustee Bopale.
Thank you. Yes, as Trustee Howard said, yesterday was a lot of fun to see everyone in a relaxed atmosphere, and it was really a pleasure to grill and serve for teachers and staff. We really do appreciate all of your hard work and dedication. I wasn't at the Nesbitt Brown Bag, but I was able to attend the one at Fox, and it was really pleasant to meet with the teachers. I did want to share one of the concerns that they had. Some of the teachers, I believe from 3rd grade, were raising the issue of whether students in grades younger than 3rd ought to be given some time or instruction in typing. so that they're prepared when taking standardized tests, which everyone is in the middle of right now. So just something for us to consider. Couple of notes about our sister district, Sequoia Union High School District. This morning, Superintendent DeGuara and I were honored to participate in the first ever college signing day for Sequoia. That was a lot of fun. It was great to be there with amongst all of those seniors. And today's event was a really great follow-up to our Carlmont visit just a few days ago on May 3rd, where a number of us from our district visited Carlmont. This is supposed to be a first step in really a continuing conversation between our districts about articulation from middle school to high school. We shared that we were reevaluating our K-8 school identities at Sandpiper and Nesbitt, and really trying to tailor our K-8 schools to existing pathways available to students at Carlmont. For instance, the BTI or Biotech Institute. What was really nice is everyone at the table during our meeting was really eager to partner. It was energizing, I felt, and I'm just looking forward to a lot more collaboration between our teachers and administrators as well. And then third, on the same subject about Carlmont High School, I was on a Zoom call about traffic improvements around that area in the Four Corners project. This has been an ongoing discussion between the Sequoia District, San Carlos School District, Belmont City, and San Carlos City officials. The gist of the project is basically to remove the 3 hard stops. So the one at Alameda and El Verano, the one at Alameda and Chula Vista, and the third being Alameda and San Carlos Avenue. So all of those areas are proposed the hard stops would be replaced with roundabouts to reduce traffic congestion and increase pedestrian safety. So the time frame on this was still unclear, but certainly a project for us to follow for sure, as it will affect not only the students, but residents of Belmont and San Carlos, Redwood Shores as well. Finally, you can see my virtual backdrop. It's to send some best wishes to our students who are competing at California State National History Day contest, and also give a shout out to the students competing in the VEX Robotics World Championship. Very proud of you, and looking forward to hearing good stories when you return. That's all I have.
Yeah. Trustee Bassi.
I'll echo what trustees Howard and Bopali said about the picnic yesterday. It was, just want to add my appreciation for the staff as well, which was what yesterday was all about, but it was also just super fun. And also Trustee Bopali already talked about the articulation conversations that we had with the Sequoia Union High School District. I just wanted to add one piece. One of the parts of our visit that I enjoyed, in addition to the start of the conversation with the district, was we had a student panel that joined us and spoke. It was all 9th graders, and it was a great mix of students who came from larger schools such as Ralston, and also from smaller schools. There was actually a Sandpiper student who attended, and there were other smaller schools as well. So it was just interesting to hear their concerns, their things that they found enlightening, or just their experiences were all very similar. It might be slightly different or a slightly different frame, but they all were concerned about, I'm coming to this new school, how am I going to fit in? How am I going to make new friends? Their experiences were slightly different, but a lot of the baseline core experiences were what you expected of a 9th grader and a freshman at a new school. So they all were very well adjusted, very articulate kids, and it was a pleasure to listen to them and hear their experiences.
Trustee Koo.
Sure. I'll also mention that a little different. May is Asian Pacific American Heritage Month, so I just want to recognize that. And it's also an opportunity to focus on some of the unique needs of the AAPI students. Continuing on the theme of mental health that I mentioned in the past, did you know that AAPI students are 3 times less likely to seek help for mental health issues? And it's often due to stigma or lack of understanding about mental health issues. Or there's the model minority myth where people expect that AAPIs are doing well, just out of expectations. And signs of mental health issues are often more subtle. They don't act out necessarily. It's more like low energy or lack of interest in bonding with their peers or lack of emotion. So it's important for all of us to be observant, right? Pay attention to those subtle signs and reach out to those who may be suffering silently. I just wanted to mention that as part of the APA Heritage Month. And then on that note, something personal, I actually changed jobs within Gilead last month, so I don't know if people knew that, from analytics to marketing, so that's a pretty dramatic shift. And I've been drinking from the fire hose and learning a ton, so super busy. But this change didn't happen overnight, though. It was a 3-year journey from self-reflection to actualizing this. And I believe that's why it's so important that our students are learning to become lifelong learners, right? That they learn how to learn, know how to self-reflect, create a plan and work that plan, to advocate for themselves and bounce back from challenges. And, we may not know what the future will bring, but if we've done our job well, we know that we will need to rise to those challenges and our students need to be prepared for that. And that brings me back to our teachers. Thank you to all the BRSSD staff who have risen to the many challenges over the past few years. I actually arrived too late at the appreciation barbecue yesterday and missed most of you. I saw a couple of people wrapping up and cleaning up and walking away by the time I arrived. But I heard it was a great time and everyone enjoyed it. And it was a well-deserved pat on the back for everyone. So thank you.
And for my report, I won't dwell too much more on the appreciation event, but I want to just send out my personal thanks and appreciation for all staff at the district who's doing extraordinary work in very difficult times. And everyone has their heart in the right place for student achievement and best for our students. So I want to throw that out there. The other event that happened since our last board meeting was the Celebrate the Music Festival. That was a fantastic event. There was a great turnout. It was changed from an October event to an April event, along with the name change. Seemed to work out well. And it was a great way to, this festival is always a great way to showcase the performing arts of our students. And having it in April gives them more of the school year to fine tune their skills rather than, right when they start the school year. So not only our students, could we see them perform their arts, but we could also see other community members as well, including the Carlmont Pep Band, and even the Stanford Band. It was a fantastic show to see all the music and arts and everything else. And of course, this festival is all about raising funds and awareness of the district. To support programs like music and many others. So I do want to thank Alan Sarver, who's the chairman of the Celebrate the Music Festival, and also the other committee members, and also School Force, who helped put that on and make a great community event for kids, for adults, for parents, for everyone all around. And on that note, with the committee, there are many veteran volunteers that have been doing this for years and years and years, and they're may exit soon. So the committee, to continue this great program, it needs some volunteers. So anyone who's willing to help up is always welcome to do that and kind of take the reins as it moves forward. And with that, I will turn it over to Superintendent DeGar.
Great, thank you. You guys always steal the thunder. I say that every month, I think. The staff celebration, I think, was one of the highlights of my week. It's been a busy week already. We say the 100 days of May. I think we've lived 100 days in 5. No, the staff celebration yesterday was pretty amazing. It was so nice to see people smiling, laughing, playing games, and reconnecting. I learned that we've done this actually in the past. About 20 years ago, we reinvigorated an old tradition, and I hope it becomes a new tradition because it was a lot of fun. And as I shared with our staff is the heart and soul of the district. They are responsible for the great things that are happening for our kids, and my deep appreciation to everyone, whether you're a classroom teacher, an administrator, custodial, office staff, district office person, across the board, work in our libraries. Everybody has a hand in bringing success to our district. So big appreciation there. I will piggyback on the Carlmont visits. We had 2 events with Carlmont. The senior stepping up day or signing day, celebrating the seniors. Not only the seniors at Carlmont, our seniors, right? Those kids were VRSSD. A lot of them were VRSSD kiddos. So it was really great to see them. I won't say come full circle because they have another 4 years and all that good stuff. And they haven't sent their kids to our schools yet, so not quite. But just great things are happening there. See the kids doing their chalk drawings about where they're headed, and just lots of excitement there. In terms of the visit, the collaboration, hats off to the Carlmont staff there. But the one thing that stood out among the 7 or so kids that we spoke to, young adults that we spoke to, was really their sense of agency. They spoke to wanting to contribute and have input into their education. And they shared thoughts about how we could improve their experiences, right? So I think we're doing some of that here in our district via the Youth Truth Survey. But when we take a moment to listen to our students and understand what they need, we provide a better opportunity for them. So just all in all, a great week so far. Okay. Oh, wait, I got one more thing on my list. I can't forget, we're approaching June 7th, and ballots are going out in the mail. It's important to recognize that VRSSD does have a parcel tax measure, Measure C, on the ballot. We are encouraging people to vote. Measure C will do some important things for our district, like ensuring that we can continue core academic programs in science, technology, math, reading, writing, retaining highly qualified teachers, just continuing to provide the robust experience that we've been able to do with local funding. So Measure C brings in approximately $3.5 million. We are currently, it's an extension of our current parcel tax. Renewing the funding is important. So my message to voters would be find those ballots and vote.
Okay, thank you. On to item number 9. Ms. Ellinger, do we have any public comment tonight?
No, we do not.
Okay, I'll forgo the description of public comment unless someone comes up later. On to item number 10, approval of the consent agenda. Are there any requested modifications or changes to the agenda or consent agenda? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve or to?
I make a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda.
A second.
We will do roll call vote tonight. Ms. Ellinger, please.
Trustee Howard?
Yep.
Trustee Gopali?
Aye.
Trustee Koo?
Aye.
Trustee Posse?
Aye.
Trustee Linebaugh?
Aye. Okay, moving on to item number 11. We have some guests today to present our energy efficiency study. So please stand, welcome to the meeting, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Great. So good evening and thanks for having us. My name is John Paul Jewell. I'm with NG North America. We are a local energy company. I think many of you are familiar with us. This is Logan Algren. He's one of our project managers. Tonight we'll be reviewing the infrastructure modernization and utility savings program, giving you a couple of updates and have time for some Q&A. So the two of us are here tonight. There's a whole team at NG working on the project. You may recognize some of these faces. Some of them have been on your sites looking at lights and HVAC units and things like that. But yeah, as I said, it's the two of us here tonight, but there's a big team supporting you all. So we're gonna just cover quickly the process to date, review the district's energy usage, talk about the energy audit summary and the measures we are looking at. We'll review some potential solar PV layouts, talk about next steps, and then have time for Q&A. And feel free to stop us as we go, but we will leave some time at the end to cover things. So just to reiterate this program, the goals from the RFQ that the district ran were to reduce energy and operational costs, to fund the program through these cost savings, to maximize environmental benefits, and to ensure anything that's done is maintained and lasts over the long term. So not just sell it and walk away, but make sure it's functional for the district and serving its purpose. The process, as you all may know, in January, NG was selected through a competitive process. We spent February reviewing the district's energy usage, walking sites to think about potential solar locations and just getting a feel for the layout of where the energy meters were, things like that. In March, we started with our lighting and HVAC audits. So we counted every fixture, took a look at the status of all of the HVAC units, made sure we had a good handle on where the energy usage in the district was going and what the opportunities were for energy efficiency. And in April, through business services staff, we made some proposed layouts of where solar could go, and business services worked with the principals to make sure that to incorporate any feedback from the sites. And we'll show you sort of where we are now in just a few minutes. I won't go through all of this, but this is the district's energy spend by site. So you'll see at the bottom, the total is $379,000 in electricity and gas usage each year. So our goal is through energy efficiency and self-generation to help the district get that as close to zero as possible. There is an asterisk on NSBIT. You may notice that it looks like a small amount of usage relative to how big the site is. So we're working with PG&E to figure out if there's a missing meter or unreported energy usage, but essentially, so that number we're still working to figure out where it's going, but this is the breakdown of how you're spending money and utilities on each site.
What are the various electric rates?
So good question. So that's the rate at which PG&E charges. So for most of your sites are B10 or B6. For larger sites, like a high school might be on an E rate and a much smaller site might be on something else. It just sort of determines the cost of power throughout the day and when the time of use charges happen. Great. So I'll hand it over to Logan now to walk through sort of what we've been doing in the energy audits and where we are in terms of potential energy efficiency measures.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thanks, John Paul. So to date, we have been identifying and kind of taking out measures as we're working through discussions with business services. Here we've check marked green the items that we are continuing to pursue. So that includes solar PV, LED, interior and exterior lighting with some controls potentially, EV charging, as well as STEM education. Marked in the blue is HVAC upgrades. We are in conversations with how to develop this measure. And then in the red are sites where, or measures where we have figured that there may not be too much potential, either because the equipment doesn't exist or it has already been completed. So like you have done some energy management work, we're not really going to be looking at that. So for lighting and lighting controls, we've completed the audits and engineering and design is underway. We will be proposing that all non-LED fixtures, so fluorescent fixtures, will be retrofit or new fixtures will be installed with LEDs. We want to keep controls similar, but we also there may be certain situations where we have to bring things up to Title 24 code. And really, in addition to having really like high quality light and light coverage, you're going to see that there will be a substantial reduction in maintenance cost and energy costs associated with lighting. As I said, HVAC and HVAC is still kind of ongoing as a development measure. We surveyed almost 300 HVAC units across the district. And we are in conversations with business services to discuss recurring maintenance issues, and we'll create a priority list of units that may be good candidates for replacements or energy efficiency opportunities. Another topic of discussion has been possibilities for a preventative maintenance program. EV charging is something that we've been asked to look at as well. This is something where we would install EV chargers in the district. There appears to be quite a lot of electric vehicles in the area, so that's kind of exciting. We would typically put EV chargers adjacent to existing ADA spots because you have to kind of tie into paths of travel. These would also be able to have the charging rates set. You could open them up to public charging or keep them within the district. And we'd also put them underneath canopies as well if those are installed. As we move into beginning to look at our PV layouts, this is a kind of a big slide. I'll take a little bit of time to discuss it. I just wanted to mention all the different things that go into putting the layouts on the sites. It's kind of a puzzle piece, and this will help you understand why things are where they are. So there's some regulatory things that we need to consider, like staying 20 feet away from student occupied structures. We also need to stay 20 feet away from residential property lines. You can go right up to a sidewalk or right of way, but we also need to be on district owned land. We follow some best practices, such as staying pretty far away from any baseball facilities. Specifically, baseballs can really damage panels. So we want to make sure we're far enough away from that. And want to avoid shade because shade also has a pretty big impact. So utility poles, tall buildings, trees as well. We also have some site considerations. So we are trying to plan for about 90% of your electrical use so that we're not really overproducing too much. It is nice to provide shade under these canopies. So it's if it can go, over cars or over a play area, that would be nice to have some shade. And then we do realize there is some future upgrades planned with TK. So we're trying to work around that, as well as some soils and geological considerations, which we've become aware of at some of your sites. Here are some examples of PV structures. So the 4 pictures on the left are examples of canopy structures. There's L-shaped structures where it's just cantilevered over one side of the post, and T-shaped structures where it's cantilevered over both sides. Those can be in parking lots or on fields. On the right-hand side of the slide, we have examples of rooftop and ground mount structures. These are a little bit more difficult to get approved through DSA. There's a longer review period, and so we prefer to install and build the canopy structures. And so that's where we will try to focus our attention. And then just another note before we get into individual slides, we have shown more than the needed amount of arrays. We're just showing potential locations at this point. We also haven't sized the system. We know general sizes, but we're not specifically with sizes. So we might have, the final arrays might be a little smaller than what's shown. As we're looking at central, I just wanted to point out what we're really looking at. So we've written the KW needed for the site versus the KW shown. So as you can see, we're showing way more than what you need. It's likely you'll need 1 or 2 of these arrays. There's a red E kind of on the south side of the round structure. That's where the electrical meter is. We will be placing the solar panel equipment around there. And then we also take into consideration where that is and how long we'll have to bore our electrical lines to get to those places, as that can be one of the costs associated with construction. We've also have some red boxes which highlight where trees are and potential shading issues. So those trees may need to be trimmed back or potentially removed. And we have the blue boxes which show the various arrays and their approximate power sizes. We've also shown just another box of where the EV charging stations could go. So here's Central. Here we have Cipriani. It's likely only one array at this school. Here's Fox. Potentially 2 arrays in the parking lot or 1 array out in the field. We are thinking this might be a T-ball site, so we have sort of a question as to whether or not the baseballs would be impacting on the solar array. Here's Nesbitt, and as John Paul said, the energy use at this site is a little still up in the air, so a little bit more development needed on this one. Ralston's pretty clear cut. There's really one spot for the array, and this is a good one. This array will need to be a tall array to allow for buses to go underneath it. So for Redwood Shores and for Sandpiper, we're aware that there are some geological soils issues, and we have had some conversations with some geotechnical and structural firms that we work with. So we're starting to develop an idea of what needs to happen here, and if needed, we can propose some roof mounted arrays, and so that's what we've shown on the buildings of Redwood Shores and Sandpiper. And then finally at the district office, we have a potential canopy either over the parking lot or on the south side on the roof of the building. You wouldn't need a DSA, a long DSA review period for the district office. All right, and I'll hand it back to John Paul.
Cool. Before I jump into Q&A, just quick next steps. So this month we'll be discussing potential funding options, what grants are out there, and how to sort of fund the project, as well as engaging with Ed Services to think about how STEAM education and STEM concepts can be brought to the classrooms based on this project. Something we get really excited about. We have a whole education department at NG, so we'll look for opportunities throughout the project for that. I won't go through all the rest of the development, but one important item is the red line there. By midsummer, we hope to have interconnection applications ready to submit to PG&E, which reserves your spot in basically grandfathering favorable solar rates. Rates will be changing, we believe, in the fall. It's still a little bit up in the air when they will be changing. So it's important, and it's great that you are all moving in this process, because you will get your interconnection applications in time to grandfather you on the favorable rates before they change. The rest of this development schedule basically focuses on a fall, coming back for a fall approval of the program. So there will be a lot more back and forth with business services, and of course, feedback from tonight and future conversations will be incorporated. But that's sort of where we are now. And then I believe that's all we had. So we can, I did see a hand, so we want to make sure we answer your questions.
Okay, before, Ms. Ellinger, can you put the folks online on screen so we can see them in case they raise their hands? Okay, and I see one's up, but Raheel beat you the punch, so we'll let, I'm sorry, Trustee Posse, we'll let Trustee Posse go first, and then Trustee Howard next.
Just a quick question on the restrictions. There was a line item about being so many feet away from a student occupied building,
Yes.
but on a couple of the sites you had rooftop potentially,
Yes.
which those are student occupied.
Yes. So great question. So a canopy structure like this on the left or in the middle has to be 20 feet away from a school or a building students are in. You can do rooftop on schools. It just takes about a year at DSA to make sure these ones on the left can be over the counter in a 1-day appointment approval at DSA. If
Got it.
it's rooftop, it's much longer. If, as we further investigate the soils, if it looks like, it's not ideal for the canopy structures, it may be more cost effective to just do the year review with DSA and that. So that's sort of the equation we're balancing right now.
And out of curiosity, why does it take so much longer to get the DSA approval on the rooftop?
Lots of reasons, but they're essentially looking at any construction documents and calculations to make sure the roof load can support it, to just make sure the students will be safe if there's, say, an earthquake, that the solar panels don't change the integrity of the roof, things like that. And then there's various considerations for fire and life safety as well that they go through. So it's just they basically take a microscope to any project that touches a school building.
Thank you.
That's good shit.
Yep.
Trustee Howard.
Yeah, I noticed that there were several plans for canopies over grass. And I was wondering how we can minimally impact our fields while at the same time providing photovoltaic arrays. I am curious about accounting for wind. Some of our sites can see some pretty mean gusts. And with these arrays, are we also accounting for storage of energy that might be generated, or are we just planning on selling that back to PG&E?
Yeah, great questions. Let's take the first one with field usage. So generally, grass will do okay underneath them. It won't necessarily ruin your landscaping. If the concern is more about like the physical space and not taking up too much play area, so these are a minimum 10.5 for the regular size, 10.5 feet tall at the low end, to 13.5 feet tall if it's the taller tees. So a lot of districts in the area do have them on the sides of their fields, and students play under them and sit in the shade while others are playing soccer or what have you. So that's something we're talking with Rui and her team about, making sure that the principals are all okay with where they're being proposed. I think at one site, in fact, we removed one of the arrays because the principal thought it didn't quite work with how the site is used and how students go to recess. So that's part of the conversation and the ongoing feedback. The second question on wind. So that's, we have a structural engineer review everything. DSA has structural engineers review everything. An inspector comes. The concrete piers go at least 10 feet deep, if not more. Probably here it'll be more because of the soils conditions. The wind shear is factored in. And even on a rooftop mount, it's sort of angled and mounted to prevent anything from blowing away. But it's a great question. Anything else you want to add on that one?
No, just about the structural is all really dialed into what the wind factors are. They designed for that.
And then please remind me what the third question was. Oh, battery storage.
It had to do with storage versus selling back the additional energy to PG.
Yeah, great question. So the way the energy rates are right now, so the B10s that Trustee Koo pointed out, those are fairly favorable for generating the electricity up to 100% of your site usage and just feeding it back to PG&E, and they pay you in a net metering. Basically, you get your bill as low as you can, and they pay you the market rate for that power. If you over generate, they pay you a lot less. So that's why we're trying to size around 100%. Battery storage can be applicable, can be useful. What we see generally though is it's really economical for large sites that get hit with these big demand charges. So high schools and larger essentially. So we did take a look and considered whether energy storage would be economical, and we're able to rule it out just because of where the battery market is and the way the PG&E rates are structured. I think in a few years, if you weren't doing this now and you waited a few years to when the state is changing energy rates, as I sort of mentioned earlier, solar probably won't pencil in the future without battery storage, but because you're doing it now, you're going to be able to take advantage of these favorable solar rates. So that's sort of where we are, and we're keeping an eye on the market. But of course, with supply chains and everything where they are, it really, getting a small battery for a site like an elementary or middle school is just an economical challenge these days, and doesn't quite pencil.
I guess along those lines though, then, because I know you mentioned lighting in the evenings and stuff like that, but those can have their own small solar battery type of thing to power at night potentially? Is that what? Or
You mean like outdoor? Exterior lighting?
outdoor exterior lighting?
Yeah, so they can't, like, if you wanted to bring new light to areas that don't currently have light, there are sort of off-grid lights that have solar attached. We haven't quite seen there's a need for it here. Most of the arrays that if we do install, like in a parking lot, there will be a light under the canopy so that someone going to their car, it'll brighten up as you're walking towards it. Some districts, if you're putting them back in the play area that isn't lit at night, some districts elect to not put those lights in because they don't want light on the playground at night if someone's back there. It's something we'll review, when we get closer to final design. Yeah, and then the sort of other, we sort of alluded to it, but we're triangulating. So if we're planning to do an LED lighting retrofit and reduce your energy bills 20 to 30% based on the lighting efficiency, then we'll size the solar to sort of make up the difference. We don't want to oversize it. We will account for the LED lighting to bring down your energy bills, and then the solar will make up the remaining bit of it.
Then I had a question about the charging station. So if I read it correctly, each site would have 2 to 4, or I was trying to figure out how that works.
Yeah, so our recommendation is to install 2 dual port chargers.
Okay.
So there'll be 4 total ports, but two charging stations. And typically one of those will be a van accessible ADA spot, and then you'll have 3 standard EV charging parking spots.
And then I was kind of curious that if over time there's more and more electric vehicles, how easy is it to convert additional spaces or?
Yeah, I think we would need to consider either bringing out some additional spares or bringing some additional capacity for electric power out to that area. And then you would be able to build another station as you need.
Okay. So it's kind of like lining it, prepping it ahead of time, and then you can tap into it later if we needed to or something.
I'm just curious, are the charging stations cost neutral and factored into the grid?
Yeah, good question. So in terms of lots of districts do it different ways, but you'll be able to set the charging rates sort of however you want. So I think at Hayward, teachers and staff get free charging during the workday, but the community can come in and charge after school hours, and they pay, I think, a little bit of a premium over the cost of electricity. So the school district isn't sort of giving away free charging. For the most part, they're not the most expensive pieces of equipment, and they do, we'll work with Rui to make sure we sort of give you insight into what we project, how much it will cost to charge them and whether they'll be cost neutral or not. There are some funds available, like Peninsula Clean Energy does have some grants that come available, the Air Quality Management District. It's just a matter of sort of grabbing them when they come open. So we've got our eyes on those as well to sort of help see if there's ways to defray the capital costs.
Trustee Howard, was your hand still up? Do you have another question or?
I have a new question.
Oh, go ahead.
So, nice presentation. I appreciate the attention to detail and especially the overviews of where the arrays might end up. Along the lines of the wind question, the other problem that we face in California is a cutoff of energy relative to winds and fire threat. Does this project allow us to continue to function if there's a wind advisory to shut down power since we would be generating our own solar, or are we caught up in the same regulation as everyone else without having independent storage?
Yeah, it's a great question. Right now, as proposed, so if the public safety power shutdowns happen, you would still lose power because these feed into the grid and you're still connected to the main grid. The microgrid solutions to solve for that are, as I mentioned earlier, are still just not very cost effective for the district. We can work with Rui's team to run some of those numbers if the board wants to see what it would cost to turn the sites into microgrids. We can do that. But one thing I will say is that you will have the option to add that in the future if, say, battery technology improves or more grants come available. That sort of can be an add-on later on. So you can still take advantage of the solar savings now, and then if you want to build resiliency services into your sites in the future, either with batteries or generators that are tied in, that can be done. In some districts, added solar a few years ago, and now they're coming back and adding batteries because they had some extra federal funding around or something like that. So yeah, it's possible, but as we're contemplating it now and proposing it now, these sites won't have that backup capability.
Could you pull up the Sandpiper one for a second? CBO Val, this is for a question for you.
Yeah.
I can't quite figure out where all of the blue panels, which building they're on top of, but I was just reflecting that all of the panels have to be on district-owned property.
Correct.
And so I assume those are all, I was just trying to figure out that lower one that's district-owned. Okay.
Yeah. And actually with both our Belmont, we've reached out to the city of Belmont and the city of Redwood City to kind of give them a heads up and talk them through some of our early thinking. And, we're going to be keeping them in the loop. Since, for example, if it's in the field, we also want to make Belmont aware of that. So
Sure.
it's an ongoing dialogue.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I had a couple questions. As you did your site surveys and looked at our energy usage, and I don't know who's the question for, but does the district use gas from PG&E or is it all electric for the HVAC or any other thing?
There is some gas usage in the HVAC units. If I were to give I could go back into our data and figure that out, but I would say it's more gas than electric for heat.
Okay. Have you done any analysis whether it be cost effective not to convert to electricity for those? I mean, and then increase the power output of the photoelectric?
Yeah, that would be part of an electrification type of scope. That may also include increasing the amount of power that you are pulling from PG&E, or just increasing, adding additional electric load. So yeah, it's definitely something that is a good conversation to have, especially if that's a priority, is to reduce your gas usage.
And then I heard you just say that the lighting out of all the electricity the district uses, you said 20 to 30%. It could be reduced by 20 to 30% if we change from current lighting to LED. Is that, or did I hear that, or?
Yeah, so our rule of thumb is it's generally 20% reduction at schools if you go from fluorescents to LEDs. So as we're sort of finalizing the audit and specification, we'll sort of have a much more specific number, but we're still.
But to clarify, 20% of lighting usage, not 20% of overall usage.
Yeah, that's okay. Obviously, that's huge. Okay. So, and then my next question to that would be, what percentage of the electricity usage in that one graph is for lighting? Or approximately?
It's a great question. Here, I don't know off the top of my head. Do you?
We don't have the numbers, but there could be a general rule of thumb. I'm not totally sure what it is. at this point.
It'd be difficult to get hard data because from PG's perspective, power is power, right? And so what is due to HVAC fans running and what's due to lighting is, yeah, we could, there may
I
be something.
just thought you might have done that in now.
No, so one of the things we will be working on is we're going to have a spreadsheet of every light fixture in the entire district, how much its wattage is and what the proposed new wattage of the replacement is. So we will be able to tell you, exactly how many kilowatt hours based on, some estimates on how long the lights are on per day. We don't have that yet, but it's part of the background work we will be doing ahead of any proposed contract or scope.
Okay. Super. And then maybe tell me about NG a little bit about how you make money. Of course, you're putting up all these structures, there's expense to you, someone's paying for that. And then also I'm sure there's government grants and incentives and tell us about the cash flow and the money. How, is money coming from the district, from the government, from the state, or?
Good question. So I did bring a finance slide in the appendix, but essentially we serve as a general contractor for energy. So we will be your one point of contact and we competitively bid out any scopes to local labor. In the RFQ process, there was an ask for a breakdown of our costs. So we gave in percentage form, essentially what's our overhead, what's our profit, what's our, what goes to materials and labor, things like that. Because there was no scope defined, it was hard to give exact numbers, but that's sort of how we present it. So we do get a overhead margin on the subcontract work we put out there, but it's limited by what we proposed in the RFQ. There are generally how school districts pay for these types of programs. So there's lots of different options. We are sort of agnostic on how it happens, but we can facilitate. We have a finance team that can help facilitate these things. So the most popular, I'd say, is the tax exempt lease purchase. So going out to banks that deal with municipal clients, asking for a low interest loan that's guaranteed by the energy savings. So we'll provide a guarantee of a certain amount per year, and the loan payment will be less than what that guaranteed savings is. So the district comes out, for the first 15 to 20 years, depending on the term, the loan service is paid for through the energy savings. A little bit of the energy savings still accrues to the district. And then after the loan is paid off, all of that guaranteed savings accrues to the district. There are power purchase agreements whereby NG or another party owns the solar structures, and then the district would just pay for the power at a fixed rate over the next 20 to 28 years. We would own the asset at the end of the lifetime of the lease. There'd be an option for the district, and at various points along the way, the district could buy the asset from NG. All that would be specified in the contract, or at the end of the life, we would take it down and haul it away and recycle it. There are some CEC loans. They haven't reopened it's called the ECA Ed program. It's a 0% interest loan for school districts. Ravenswood has done one. A few others in the area have done them. They haven't reopened it since 2020, but we do have our eye on it. So if they do open that program, it's something that you may want to apply for. And then there are various state and federal grants that pop up from time to time. So things like EV charging incentives. There aren't currently any solar incentives in California, but there, may be some targeted. There are still some targeted lighting retrofit incentives that we can help the district apply for. And then other districts have used, bond financing or on-bill financing from the utility as well, or various other pots of funding like AB 841, also known as CalShape, which helped with filters and some of the indoor air quality measures that was administered by the CEC. Belmont-Redwood Shores didn't qualify for that because it was targeted to high need and districts based on this criteria. We have heard that the phase 3 will be coming maybe in the fall, and that may unlock additional funding that Belmont-Redwood Shores may be able to take advantage of. So we'll keep our eye on that.
Okay, so there's leasing option, there's the buyout or pay up upfront. And you say the current break-even point is 15 to 20 years?
So
approximately for a project like ours?
Yeah, so for the not the break-even point, but the term of the leases that we're seeing from banks for municipal clients are usually around 15 years. we will work with the business office to sort of put together a pro forma analysis on, here's how much your power rates are, here's how much they're escalating, here's how much your savings are. And so generally, given how quickly PG&E rates are escalating, these types of projects do have pretty reasonable paybacks, but we will make sure that business services has all the data they need to do that analysis.
But usually at what point, I mean, so there's an upfront cost to install everything.
Yeah.
Let's say it's, $1 million, just to remember, right? And then how long, how many years does it take to pay back that $1 million off the cost and energy we're saving?
Yeah, it's a good question. So a district of this size, sort of nearby, they had a $3 million project, and the net savings over the lifetime was about $7.5 million. So it was, I can't really say at what point the break even will be yet, but generally one nuance is, right, HVAC replacements don't have a lot of savings. So some districts may say, as long as this whole program is cost neutral, we'll upgrade our infrastructure and call it a day. Others want to maximize savings, and so they might not touch their HVAC with this type of program. So it really just depends on the guidance of the board and business services and what you all want to do. But what we will do is competitively price materials and labor, and put together sort of options for the district to choose.
And then do you provide guarantees on the cost savings then?
Yeah, so we will guarantee the performance. The contract will specify, a guarantee on solar production out to 20 years. It's up to the district how long they want the guarantee, as well as pre and post. And we'll come out and do pre and post measurements on the lighting to guarantee those savings as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Just to piggyback on that a little bit, I think one of the other tricky parts of calculating what the break-even point is how you even calculate your savings when you inherently have variance in your power usage, right? And so in going through the RFQ process, when we were interviewing, one of the things that really stood out to our team about NG was how thoughtfully they think about calculating baselines. We got into a very detailed discussion in that interview about data sets. So it's a tricky question to answer in general, but I will say in the interview process, we were very impressed with the thoughtfulness in which they approached that question.
Any other? I appreciate you coming in and presenting to us. I love the idea of being environmentally friendly and, reducing our carbon footprint in the district. So I'm looking forward to that. Any more questions, Danny? Any more?
No, I thank you. I just want to say thank you, John Paul. Thank you, Logan, for coming out and sharing this. And I've heard great things about the start from Rui and her team. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Thanks for
guys so
having
much. It's been great to work with you guys. And
Yeah, you as well.
yeah, thanks for all the work you've done.
Okay, we're on to item number 12, approval of variable term limit. And this is, who is this? This is Ms. Eastburn.
Hi. So it is requested tonight that effective August 1st, 2022, Susanna Francesca Busiek be eligible for a variable term waiver for the 22-23 school year. Francesca has taught RSP at Ralston Middle School for the last 2 years. She's currently enrolled in an Ed Specialist Mild Moderate program at Cal State East Bay and is expected to be eligible for an intern credential in the spring of 2023. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees approve the variable term waiver for Francesca Busiek for the 2022-23 school year.
Any questions or discussion from the board? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the variable term waiver for Francesca Busiek for the 2022-2023 school year.
Second.
We'll give it to Jim, Trustee Howard, since we know there's a little delay on the Zoom there. So, okay, we'll call a roll call vote, please.
Okay. Trustee Bopali,
Aye.
trustee Howard,
Aye.
trustee Koo,
Aye.
trustee Pussy. Aye. Trustee Langbach.
Aye. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And on to the nutritional program update.
Indeed. Can I still be here? 'Cause
Oh, yeah, please.
Okay.
I think you're.
I'll just grab the. Yeah. All right. So coming off of our district-wide meal yesterday, I thought I'd give a, other type of district-wide meal update.
Very healthy.
Yeah, exactly. Very healthy. So just as background, around this time last year, we learned about the state mandate for universal meals. So effective beginning next school year, BRSSD will be required to provide 2 meals, breakfast and lunch, free of charge each school day to students requesting a meal, regardless of their individual free or reduced price meal eligibility. And so specifically in order to comply with this, one change will be we'll need to launch a breakfast program at all sites. And we'll continue to operate a lunch program. And in both cases, offer all families the choice to participate in this free of charge, though participation is not required. The requirement is on us to offer it. So in terms of our planning roadmap, knowing that this was a change that was coming, there's really 3 phases here. So first, researching and planning. So we are not, while breakfast is new to us, it is not new to most schools in California. So there's a lot of kind of learning from what's already out there in terms of what's working. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. So researching potential models, but then also identifying any infrastructure gaps that we have in order to move forward with this. Next, we wanted to pilot and iterate. So actually getting a trial of what it might be like to serve breakfast, and finally codifying and rolling out. So just to provide a bit of a process update. So on the researching and planning, the goal here was, again, to understand different models, solicit site input, and identify any major changes that we need to make, especially around equipment and infrastructure that may need longer lead time. So the outcomes here is, first of all, we have selected, along with our labor partners, a after the bell breakfast model for BRSSD. So what that means is that breakfast will be served after the school day begins, as opposed to optional before. And equity was the main factor in selecting this model. So after the bell model allows us to serve breakfast to all students, regardless of when they're arriving to school. And many studies have shown that they have higher rates of breakfast participation, particularly for food insecure students. So this is truly the best way to live out the intent of this mandate, which is to ensure that all food insecure students have access to a healthy meal, 2 healthy meals at school every day. So next, piloting and iterating. So we wanted to identify sites willing to participate in a pilot. As you guys know, those sites were Ralston and Central. This allows us to try with our middle school students as well as elementary school students to see that. So a couple of results. First of all, from a participation standpoint, so our goal was to, we need to run something that is complying with all our guidelines. It allows us to gather some information about the staffing implications, so how much work is required, as well as impact on the school day, and give us some anticipation of what volume we're expecting based off of this. So here you see some numbers here of going through April 28th. For comparison, what the lunch participation rate is. So Ralston, for instance, about 37% of the families on average, it fluctuates from day to day, but we're talking a weekly average, participate, 25% participate in the breakfast program. At Central, lunch participation is a bit higher at 62%, and about half of them, 29% is participating in breakfast. So, what we're anticipating is a couple of things. I think our lunch numbers are pretty steady at this point. Next year, our lunch participation probably won't change. We anticipate our breakfast will probably be a little higher, but it seems that perhaps overall the interest in breakfast is a little bit lower than the interest in lunch. And finally, where we are today is, we're continuing to pilot, but we want to start synthesizing these and start working with our union partners in order to formalize the model, as well as supporting our principals in developing site-specific operational plans that will be launched over the summer. And then sort of just a quick financial piece. So the way that this logistically works is that the state provides funds that supplement with some planned federal funding. So for instance, previously, if you're a student who's eligible for free reduced lunch, the federal government will pay $1.97 for your breakfast, and then otherwise they don't pay anything. And what the state has said is, if you're not eligible, then we will go ahead and pay the gap so that you're receiving $1.97 per student, but who you get that from differs based on your student. So it is still important that we collect that paperwork, for instance. It is still important that we know who is taking breakfast and who is taking lunch, because who we then apply for that reimbursement from varies. And then as far as estimated financial impact, so here you've got on the first column, how much has been spent so far. So literally the check has been cut, it has been spent. Next to that is our estimated end of year. So it'll be a little higher. For instance, salary and benefits will obviously be higher because they're continuing to work and we will continuing to pay them. Lunch Masters meals, of course, is the cost of our actual meals. Then we have some additional supplies. So this year, because of, for this year, because of supply chain issues, and also because the overall rate has gone down when we moving to just the reimbursement rate as opposed to a paid rate. There's been certain things that previously were covered by Lunch Masters that they're just not able to afford under the reimbursement rate that we're giving them. So that includes things like plates, trays, labels, and we've picked up some of that. Permit fees is sort of an annual cost. Equipment. So one of the things that we will need to roll out breakfast. So breakfast is typically delivered the day before, so you need refrigeration, whereas because we have a vended meals agreement where we're not cooking food on site. Historically, we haven't needed to have refrigeration because it is delivered in order to be served immediately same day. And then I added also our 22-23 estimates. So that's with rolling out breakfast based on what we're seeing in participation rates. And then whether there's a revenue offset, right? So this $1 million that we're 1.1 million that we're spending this year on Lunch Masters meals, and we're estimating that'll be close to 1.9 million next year, that those meals are reimbursed if fully compliant. So there are rules around how you serve it. And if a meal is not compliant, then we can't claim reimbursement. So examples of why a meal may not be compliant, a meal has to have the student has to pick up an entree and then a fruit or vegetable and a milk. And if they're not picking up all three, you actually can't claim reimbursement for that. That comes into play, real life scenario that happened at Ralston. Our fridge was malfunctioning. So we get there in the morning and the milks have been not refrigerated all night. We certainly don't want to serve bad milk, but we also don't want to not serve breakfast. So that was a day in which we served the entree without the milk and could not claim for those. So generally we expect, a vast majority of our meals to be reimbursable. There will likely be some cases where not all of them are. So that's good news because it means the biggest cost is going to be reimbursable. If we're looking at our 22-23 estimate of our 2.2, 1.9-ish of that will be reimbursable. The equipment, we've bought some refrigerators this year. We do have a few more materials that we think we'll need to buy next year. These are generally more one-time-ish costs, so they won't be recurring. We received a $25,000 infrastructure grant for rolling out meals. We've applied for a few more. So we expect some of that to be offset, but not all of it. And so bottom line, meaning kind of our net cost to general fund. So if we take out the pieces that don't have a revenue offset, this year, we're expecting that to be about $217,000 net cost to our general fund, and ongoing about $350,000. And so with that, I will take any questions about our meal program.
I'm curious about one thing. So I know there's a lot of these, we've talked about this as being an underfunded mandate, which it is what it is. Some of the equipment costs, some of the other costs that aren't reimbursable, do you see any light at the end of the tunnel where the state may give money? Because this is a statewide issue. So are they talking about maybe, is there any hope that they may fund some of these things that aren't funded right now?
Yeah, I mean, I have not heard any talk about covering like personnel costs, which is going to be the majority of our ongoing costs for running this program. Like I mentioned, there is another infrastructure program grant that we've applied for that would hopefully cover much more, if not all of this. We just haven't heard back from there. So it's entirely possible that the state decides to fund these grant programs at a higher rate. I was actually just talking to someone from the CDE about, is there recognition of the fact that there's this, sort of large fixed cost regardless of your size, because oftentimes these allocations are based on size, and we're kind of at an awkward point where they have something that's like, an LEA receives a minimum of $10,000. So even if you're a small LEA with 300 kids, you get the 10,000, and then above that it's incremental. And we're kind of at that awkward piece where we're well outside the baseline, but the incremental doesn't add as much to us as it would to like an SFUSD, for instance. So the May revise will be coming out soon. I am hopeful. I know there's been a lot of chatter from schools that haven't done universal meals around the costs affiliated with this. However, ongoing, if you look at our net cost to general fund of the 350 and how much of that is the salary and benefits, I don't think there's going to be a world where the state funds the operational costs of running it, just the reimbursable costs.
And one other question, thanks for taking all the time to go to this beta program. I think that was great to get it going and try it out at 2 schools and different age levels and see how it worked. I like the fact that you're going with the after the bell schedule. I think that's right, to be inclusive of as many children as possible. As far as the timing of the breakfast, through the beta program, what did you learn about the best timing to do it and the proximity of?
I would say we're still,
and breakfast is.
Yeah, we're still early on in that. I think there's still many things that we're working through around what that beginning of day could look like. So.
Thanks for the presentation. I'll see Trustee Howard's hand up.
Thanks, Rui. That was a great presentation as always. I was wondering about 2 issues, and one is a little bit more complex. I'll start there. What we heard at the Brown Bag today is that oftentimes when children do the pickup, and this is just lunchtime, right? This is not a beta site for breakfast. But when children do the pickup and they do it the right way, sometimes those servings end up in the waste. So they do their fruit, their milk, their entree, for example, if that's the correct combination. And instead of utilizing those things, they go straight to the trash. So that increases potentially our waste burden and costs to the district indirectly because of the waste burden. And they also noted that there's children that are, the serving size is fairly uniform, whether you are a kinder or a 3rd grader or an 8th grader. And so there was some question around the possibility of not only having a pickup station, but a give up station.
Yes, so this is actually a practice we had in the past and as a common waste management tactic, which is called a share table. So you still, the student, in order for it to be reimbursable, I have to pick up all my components, but then there's a table where I can leave anything that I don't want. Because another part of reimbursability is that each student you can only claim once for each student. So even if a student needs more food, they can only claim for one, they can go to the share table. The share table is a practice that we did not have allowed this year for COVID reasons, but is absolutely a practice that we plan on bringing back and is something that we have going at our pilots actually to start that at a small scale.
Okay, sounds good. And then the beta testing for the breakfast, one has to wonder how successful or what the demand was relative to the ratio of students that were unduplicated at those sites, meaning are there sites that have more unduplicated children over others, and for our beta testing station or sites rich in unduplicated patients or children, or on the leaner end?
Our pilot sites are on the lower end of unduplicated students. We do see good participation from the unduplicated students at those sites. We are in the process of running the analysis actually on lunch uptick from unduplicated students across different sites.
My only point being that, you might see more, well, as we roll out to the general district, we may see more
Yes.
participation in breakfast than was seen at our pilot sites.
Yes, so
relatively.
in factoring in these costs, the estimate was a ratio of the site's lunch participation, not a flat percentage assumed across each school.
Further questions? Thank you, CBO Val, for the presentation. Number 14 is the CBA Vice President nomination.
Yes, I'll go ahead and speak to that. So CSBA just recently put out a nomination practice for nominating potential candidates to serve as vice president of CSBA. There's several requirements that a vice president needs to have done. They need to have served on a school district or county board that's a member of CSBA, have completed 2 years as a member of the delegate assembly or 4 years as a school board member on a member board, which we are, and submit a minimum of 3 nomination forms for 2023 CSBA officers. Nominations can take place by either a school or county board that's a member of CSBA, which again, we are a part of, or by an individual board member. So 3 nominations coming forward from either an individual or a collective board. There are some qualifications for what they're looking for in terms of an effective CSBA leader would exemplify. And this item is just simply before you so that you can have a conversation to share any potential folks that could be nominations. A nomination doesn't mean an endorsement. A nomination doesn't mean we would vote for that person if they were on the slate, but it's just important to perhaps share background of individuals that you think may be a good vice president for CSBA to lead the organization. So I'll just open it up for conversation and sharing.
The nomination goes to a nomination committee, right? That then vets all the nominations, make sure that they meet the qualifications before it comes back out again for voting.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. The nominations, it goes to CSBA by June 1st, no later than June 1st. CSBA takes a look at that, make sure that all of the qualifications have been met for them to move forward to the next process.
Yeah, so I have a person that I was interested in sharing with you all for consideration as nomination by our district. And that person is Betty Lusk. So Betty Lusk is currently the CSBA Director at Large African American, and she's held that position for the past 9 years. And prior to that, she was on the Delegate Assembly, and she's part of the Monterey Bay Union High School School District and was a retired teacher. So she has a lot of experience in education, and she's also always led with equity at the forefront. And that's part of the reason why after retirement, she decided to do more, right, and continue that work by being the voice of students and community members that may be facing barriers and making sure that there's awareness at a broader scale about what those barriers might be so that all students can be successful. And I think because of that background, I think she's more than qualified to be nominated for the vice president role. And just want to open it up for a discussion if people have any questions about Betty and or this process.
Trustee Papali.
Yeah, I mean, I think Ms. Lusk sounds like, you know, a very capable person. I don't know her. And to be honest with you, I feel a little bit uncomfortable. You know, I know we're not voting, but when you nominate someone, you are vouching for, it wouldn't make sense to nominate someone and then not be in support of them. So I think the nomination process, in a sense, is it's a vouching for that person. So just not being familiar with the person, and given the fact that it looks like, from what Superintendent DeGuara mentioned, you could have a nomination, I believe, by either the board or an individual member of a member board. So I think my thought would be that it might be more appropriate to have, if Trustee Koo knows her, maybe to perhaps have an individual nomination as opposed to the board.
Any other thoughts or?
Please, Trustee.
Just, I understand what Trustee Papali is saying, and when I read the language that's presented to us, it says that that school boards can help in two ways. One is to submit a nomination form, or two, to encourage potential candidates to run for office. So my reading is that we are to nominate as a school board, and so I'm wondering if a option would be for us to, as a school board, to encourage her to, so that shows our support, but it's not quite nominating her ourselves, because we're not all as familiar with her as you are, because I'm assuming that you've worked with her in your own work with the delegate assembly. So is that an option?
Yeah, I mean, there's two ways to do it. Obviously, if you nominate as a district, then it's just, you know, it's coming from the district. So there's kind of district member support for the candidate as far as the nomination is concerned. Otherwise, you could also do an individual. And then it really just comes down to when after the nomination committee does all of their reviews. So beyond verifying the qualifications, there's actually like a application form that the candidates have to fill out. The nomination committee will actually interview all the candidates too. So it's a very rigorous process. So who we nominate may not actually come back out again, but I'm very confident that Betty will pass with flying colors, knowing who she is. But I mean, that's the process. So it's really more looking at her qualifications on paper and saying, hey, do you think this person is qualified? If so, then we could agree to nominate as a district. But if you wanted to talk with her offline and get to know her personally, I mean, I can always nominate her as an individual, or we could bring it back at the next meeting too, because the nominations are due on June 1st. So there is time, if people wanted to do that as well, to reach out to her and get to know her more directly, like do your own interviews, right?
I'm going to go back on what I just previously said, because I read further. I reread another part, and it says that nominations. So if I understand the process correctly, each candidate needs to submit 3 nomination forms, and the form can be from the board or from an individual on the board.
Exactly.
So then that's what Trustee Papali was saying. It's
Yeah.
that second part.
Yes.
I'm with it.
I read it too a couple of times. It's not so the way I read it is the nomination from a board or from an individual are considered as equal. I think I want to make sure that any discussion about candidates perhaps doesn't get opinions don't get messy about candidates we're talking about. I think it's probably important that we're clear on whether our preference is to nominate an individual individually or as a board, so that it doesn't. So we're not talking about Betty. I think we're talking about our preference and our process to nominate as a collective or as an individual. I'm hearing from a couple of members that perhaps individual is the way we prefer to go. So sharing backgrounds and characteristics of people we know is great, and nominating individually. But that's the will of the board.
Yeah, and I guess that also depends, like if other people know of people that they want to nominate, that could be part of the discussion too. Because we're bringing this up for discussion early. There's still one more board meeting before June 1st. So if you wanted to nominate as a district and then do some independent research and bring back more information for further discussion, that's a path forward too. Otherwise, we could also decide to nominate as individuals.
The nominations are June 1st, and then when is the actual election?
Oh, the election is actually
In the fall.
in December.
Okay.
It's a long process. It's a very long vetting process. And the elections actually take place at the delegate assembly. So we as a board would not be voting on the vice president role. So it's actually the delegate assembly that votes. So I think I misstated it earlier, but I said it would come back to the district. It actually doesn't. So our nomination just goes forward and the vote never comes back to us. It's the delegates in December that happens right before the annual education conference.
I think my preference would be the same as trustee Gopali to each of us individually nominate, since it's an option.
Mhm.
And thank you. I think that's a great idea for us to individually research individuals that we might want to nominate. And then I think if we each individually nominate, that would, I think that's sufficient. But I'm happy to go with what everyone else wants to do on this particular matter.
Jim has something.
Trustee Howard.
Yeah, I think Dan brought up a really good point, is that maybe what's the important thing to focus in on is the process. For instance, only to my knowledge, only one of us has worked with this individual. And I wonder if our process might be that we as a board don't object to individual nominations if that person has had contact with the individual they want to nominate. But if multiples on the board have worked with that individual, then that would seem one that we would consider for a group nomination. For instance, there are several people that we have worked with through San Mateo County, say like on the Equity Network, that if they came up, then I would have both a view of their resume and a knowledge of how they, not only what they believe in and what projects they take on, but how they work with individuals. And so, that I can think of several that, say, for instance, Amy, myself, and Sam have all worked with, that if that person came up, then it would feel like I could have a robust conversation in support of that person. Whereas this one, sounds good, but I just don't know them at all.
Thank you for the comments. I from what I've heard, I tend to agree. I don't have anything further to add. This is a discussion item or action if necessary, but I don't believe there is any action that we need to do unless.
Yeah, unless you decide to push
Yeah.
this out to the next meeting and all do our independent research and come back again. Otherwise, that would be the path forward would be individual nominations, right?
Okay. Well, it was a good discussion, a good kind of talking about how we as a board want to approach these things. So why don't we leave it there, let everyone think about it, do some research and we can see where it goes from there.
And I can, on my side, if there's information or people that you would like to share with me, I can share that with the whole board via my weekly board updates to keep everybody in the loop of potentials out there.
And I hope at least everyone's a little more educated how these things work.
Yes.
And then typically like the vice president serves for 1 year, then moves to president-elect, and then moves to president, and then moves to past president. Although it's not automatic, sometimes there's others that come in the middle if the vice president is not doing a good job. So, but that's how-
Amy, are you wanting to nominate her because you like her or you dislike her, given all that work that's in front of her?
She's just passionate. She took a long time to decide whether she was ready for a VP role. And so kudos to her for stepping up,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks for sharing everyone's perspective on that. On to item number 15 is future board meeting agenda items.
Yes. So as we've been talking about kind of a busy spring here, a couple key points. Our regular meeting on Thursday, May 26th is going to begin at 7:15. A little bit later because we have trustees that have students in our schools that have open houses those nights. So we want to make sure that you guys have the opportunity to visit in your kiddos' classrooms. And I'm trying to make sure that we plan the agendas accordingly. It is a big, spring is big with public hearings with LCAP and budget. The team is going to make sure that we're well-versed in that and ready for those approvals. The regular meeting on Monday, June 13th will be starting at 5, a normal meeting. It will be a shorter meeting on the shorter side with a second meeting immediately following, which is our board retreat. We're going to have a mini retreat at the end of the year will convene at 7:30. 2 different types of meetings. So we're going to put forth 2 different agendas for that. And that takes us through June.
Yeah, I noticed this year, I think there's been a couple school event conflicts with the board calendar. Maybe
Yeah.
we can more broadly, announce that the board calendar to administrators so they can keep an eye out.
It is. And Miss Ellinger has already got them on our master calendar, I believe.
That's correct.
We're doing a better job of aligning that. And the board's adopted schedule of meetings will help us make sure. And so far, knock on wood, all the conflicts have been alleviated that we know of.
And for clarification, typically we have a 5 p.m. start at 6:15. Well, 6:15 for the public.
Yes.
As far as the 7:15 start, how would that affect the open session for public viewing?
We'll make sure that's really clear. I think we will have a closed afterwards if needed.
Okay.
So we'll start with open
So
session.
7:15 will be
recommendation.
open session for
Correct.
public and continue. Okay, that's fair. And then that last line on it was a little confusing to me as well. Regular meeting 5 o'clock, closed 6:15 to 7:15.
So I always defer to advertising our meetings. Our open sessions start at 6:15, but our board meetings begin at 5 p.m. So I think we need to be very clear, because if people want to address something on closed and we're saying 6:15, our closed is at 5, right? So we want to make sure that the meeting officially begins, but usually the meat and potatoes that the public wants access to begins at 6:15. So
for the 7:15 meeting, the closed session will be after.
We'll make sure that that's clearly agendized.
I was talking about the June 13th.
It just reads a little, the line reads a little confusing.
Yeah, so the regular meeting starts at 5 p.m. We adjourn to closed session.
We will finish open and close June 13th between 5 and 7:30. The first meeting will start at 5 and end by 7:30. And then the retreat will begin at 7:30 and go till when we finish the retreat.
So
Okay,
is
6:15 to
closed 5 to
7:15, we can
6:15?
disregard that.
Is closed 5 to 6:15 and regular is 6:15 to 7:15?
No, we'll adjust the close. We'll adjust the close parameters. Yes, sorry. We'll adjust that.
Okay, so there will be closed session at the beginning,
Um,
or is it to be determined?
To be determined.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I'll leave it there.
Yeah, we'll probably actually start the meeting early. We'll make sure that we clarify.
Okay.
We're trying to pack a lot into.
Yeah. But I'm happy that we're doing that to
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
set some next year goals.
That's not like.
And was one of these meetings supposed to be where we had the candidate info session? Because now I'm confused.
Yeah, we are working through that still.
Okay.
The ideal candidate would be that June 13th. We had tossed around last meeting doing it a different date. I think it probably still maybe makes sense to add that before, but we can talk through that.
Was there a question from one of the board members? I think Trustee Bopale.
Yeah, I had my hand raised, but then I put it down because I think Superintendent DeGuara was, I thought we were set in terms of the close versus open and the timings, but it sounds like there's some flexibility. I've mentioned to Superintendent DeGuara my conflict for that day from 5 to 6:30. So I think we can probably figure out the logistics.
And, okay, thank you for clarification. And I think there was one other thing, there's a request to allot some time on the May 26th meeting for recognition of student achievements.
Yes, I'll work that in. We have our kids are amazing. I'm just going to lead with that. There's probably about 20 or so that deserve, there's 4,000 that deserve recognition. Yes. But there's been 20 or so kids that have won the Belmont Poetry Contest, are participating at the state National History Day, were science fair winners, and we would like to acknowledge them. So we're going to do some outreach, do some video clips, some photos, and do kind of a video kind of montage to recognize them publicly.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I know there was Kent Awards recently, so I don't know if there's time to squeeze a recognition in here or.
Yes, so we do have 2 Kent Award winners. We'll announce Sandpiper and Nesbitt are receiving Kent Awards next week. We will share more information with that, and we'll definitely agendize that probably a little bit later. Our tradition is once they actually have the plaque and the award, they come and they share it with everybody, and that buys us a little time too.
Any other discussion on the calendar? In that case, I will, let's see, okay, so the board will now convene back to closed session, and we do not expect anything to report out after that at 8:01 PM. Still light outside.
You said.